Boko Haram, a real security threat, but assistance from the United Nations and the African Union is not needed because regional powers are in good shape to tackle the militancy. Those are the words of Nigeria National Security Advisor Sambo Datsuki. The statements from the Nigeria National Security Council is a sharp contrast to Cameroon's call for a global response to a global menace as the Boko Haram equation is getting out of imagined proportions. American comments on the war on terror are crucial. Plus 14 years, the country has exploited all available tools to outwin terrorism and extremism. My guest today on GlobeWatch is the new U.S. ambassador to Cameroon. He has worked across many U.S. embassies in the world and probably he has been in Africa since 1985. Michael Stephen Hoza spent 6 months on special mission for the White House on Boko Haram before landing in Yaoundé as U.S. ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary. What should countries fighting Boko Haram expect from the Obama administration? Well, this is your first official one-on-one media interview ever since you entered Cameroon. Ambassador Michael Stephen Hoza, welcome to GlobeWatch.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here, Charles.
You're welcome. I am convinced that discussions at the highest and lowest corridors of power across the world today are increasingly being dominated by the Boko Haram spell. Can we have an American qualification of Boko Haram?
Absolutely. The U.S. government has declared Boko Haram as a foreign terrorist organization. Secretary Kerry just last week characterized the activities of Boko Haram as crimes against humanity. We have a $7 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Abu Bakr Shekau. What he has perpetrated, the crimes he has committed, he must be brought to account, he must be held accountable, justice must be served, and these depredations must be stopped. That is the U.S. government position.
Okay, you just qualified Boko Haram as a terrorist organization out of the over 165 terrorist networks existing in the world. That is according to American search engine, Google. And the State Department publishes yearly the Global Terrorism Patterns Report. Can we have its explanation on why people become terrorists and increasingly brutal like those of Boko Haram?
The origins of Boko Haram are widely debated and discussed, but the clarity of what the organization is today is crystal clear. Murders, kidnappings, abductions, pillaging of villages. I mean, this is an evil that has gone beyond. Now the global community must stop, take notice, and end it. The definitions are clear. The terrible suffering of the people of Nigeria, of Cameroon, of Chad, and Niger is readily apparent. And at this point, the U.S. government stands ready to support the countries in the region to end this violence.
We'll talk about American assistance shortly. I come back to this question. Why do you think that we are increasingly having terrorist organizations across the world? Last year, one international organization concluded that at least 17,000 people died because of terrorist attacks, and Boko Haram carried one of the deadliest. It is estimated that in the first week of January, Boko Haram killed at least 2,000 people in Nigeria in a day. Why are people becoming so brutal?
You know, by some counts, Boko Haram has killed more people than Ebola. What causes this violence, what unleashes it, what turns it loose, what takes it to such extremes is hard to determine. But it is readily apparent that it is there. And the pain and suffering in the north, the disruption to the economies. At this point in history, these nations are poised here in sub-Saharan Africa, in the sub-region, they are poised to leap into the 21st century economy. Now is the time for all of the people of this region to expand their horizons, join the 21st century global economy, and pursue their happiness. And yet we have, from ignorance, from neglect, from violence, from any source of origins, it has become radicalized. It has become extreme. And now the organization is run by criminals. The effects on the neighboring countries and inside Nigeria are just, the depredations are unconscionable.
Okay. You said Boko Haram is a terrorist organization. Where does the U.S. classify the motives of Boko Haram? On the religious motivated terrorism ladder, or the political motivation terrorism ladder, or both? Do you think Boko Haram is a religious movement?
Not at all.
In the name of Islam?
Not at all. Not at all. Boko Haram has nothing to do with religion. I have been extremely pleased with the statements made by religious leaders in Cameroon, Christian and Muslim, and by religious leaders in Nigeria, Christian and Muslim, who have clearly pointed out Boko Haram has nothing to do with religion.
Then it should be a rebellion, if it is not a religious movement.
One asks if it even has anything to do with politics. Some say there are political origins to Boko Haram, but in actual fact, at this point in time, Boko Haram is a large criminal organization. It is there to perpetrate its own well-being. It pursues its own agenda solely for the purpose of violence, and it must be stopped.
Okay, it has to be stopped. Scholars with the Eisenhower Research Project at Brown's University's Watson Institute for International Studies put the cost of the war on terror at over $4 trillion, and some 225,000 people have lost their lives since 2001. We are moving down to checking on how you assist Cameroon as the U.S. counter-terrorism strategy, Pete.
Right. No question. Terrorism costs the planet enormously. It's a terrible drag on the movement to a second age of enlightenment, a global age of enlightenment, is being dragged down by barbarians who are dragging us back into the dark ages. That's terrorism. And fighting it requires all of us. You know, as you mentioned, I've been in Africa since 1985. One thing about Africa, if a lion becomes a man-eater, all of the villages will set aside their differences and track down that man-eater. Today it's a global village, so the entire international community must come together to attack terrorism wherever we find it on the planet. We have it here in northern Cameroon, and we must say first and foremost that Cameroon can take great pride in the activity of its security forces in combating Boko Haram, in protecting the civilian population and defending the borders of Cameroon. These young security forces have done a fantastic job with great courage and with great sacrifice. We, the U.S. government, have been alongside them from the beginning. We have had a long partnership with Cameroon. It started when we both had reason to prevent piracy in the Gulf of Guinea. So we have had a close cooperation with the security forces of Cameroon and performed magnificently. They have stopped piracy in the Gulf of Guinea in Cameroonian waters. No incidents in the last 3 years.
Sure, Ambassador. Nigeria has been very bitter on the fact that the U.S. or Washington has refused to sell them hardware military equipment to outwin Boko Haram. And I understand that the French have done the same to the Yaoundé administration. What should countries tackling Boko Haram expect from the Obama administration in particular? Where is the U.S. help coming in?
Nigeria has suffered grievously at the hands of Boko Haram, and they have fought valiantly. And we have offered the same assistance that we offer to all the countries in the region. We've asked for the countries of the region to come together and work together to fight Boko Haram and bring this problem under control. Here in Cameroon, we have expanded that program from a cooperation and a partnership to fight piracy. We now have expanded that cooperation to fight Boko Haram. It requires not just equipment, it requires skill sets and training because this is a different type of threat than Cameroon has ever faced before. It is an order of magnitude different in terms of military tactics and in the harsh brutality of bombings. Nigeria itself suffered over 38 bombings last year in 2014, killing hundreds of innocent people using suicide bombers, vehicle bombs. This sort of terror requires very specialized training of your security forces in order to protect your civilian population.
Can we have some details when it comes to equipment supply, when it comes to human resource response, when it comes to training? Can we have some specifics? If it is not a matter of national security interest.
Let's be clear. U.S. military personnel, at the invitation of the government of Cameroon, are present in Cameroon.
Military personnel, are you talking of ground troops or technical assistance?
Advisors and trainers who have come to Cameroon, and they provide the advice and assistance and training that Cameroon needs. So
let's put the option of ground troops off the table for the moment.
Well, ground troops appear around the world, wherever they need to be, according to the threat and the priority. But the fact of the matter is, Cameroon is handling this problem. Cameroonian soldiers are very much up to this task. Advice and assist is what is requested right now and is what we are providing. In terms of equipment, we generally don't talk about equipment in a public forum. Military equipment is not something, first of all, we're not here to get credit. We're not here to claim credit. This is Cameroon's fight, and they are fighting well, and we applaud their efforts and we support their efforts. The equipment that arrives is equipment that's needed. It's the experts in the military field determine what sort of equipment is needed, and it is brought. The training commences, and then the Cameroonian security forces use it. We don't talk about it, and we don't show pictures of it because we don't want to take credit, and B, we'd rather Boko Haram find out about the equipment on the battlefield rather than in the newspaper.
Are you going to sell weapons to Cameroon? It's a question that many Cameroonians have asking on the streets.
Absolutely, absolutely. Military equipment has been purchased by Cameroon from the United States and from other sources around the world. We've certainly approved licenses for Cameroon to purchase equipment that is necessary for them to protect their people and their territory. And we will continue to do so. We also, when possible, provide equipment. So the relationship is not just one of equipment. It is a true partnership. We learn from the Cameroonian security forces. They learn from us. We understand the problem. As the two of us understand the problem better, we're better able to prepare the security forces to defend the civilian population and defend the border against Boko Haram.
Last week in Nigeria, Secretary of State John Kerry said American support, especially for the Nigerian government, will be determined by the credibility, the democraticness, quote unquote, of the elections to take place in Nigeria, and ended by saying, we will do more. Nigeria says she does not need UN assistance, neither that of the African Union. Are you going to be involved in this war against Boko Haram on a bilateral basis or on a multilateral basis?
We're approaching it as a multilateral basis and a regional problem. We believe everyone in the region must work together. It's not just a problem that can be solved by any one nation.
Do you think this is political gesticulation from Nigeria?
No, Nigeria is challenged. They have a very huge election ahead of them. They've suffered grievously from Boko Haram. Their relationship with their neighbors is critical to them, economically, politically, culturally. So cooperation is what we would like to see. For our part right now, we applaud Cameroon's decision to invite Chadian troops onto Cameroonian soil to help in the struggle against Boko Haram. We will help the coordination between those two elements to the degree that Cameroon and Chad ask us to. For the most part, though, we will continue our support to Cameroon. That is particularly my job as U.S. Ambassador to Cameroon, is to meet with the Cameroonian leadership, determine what they need, what assistance they want, how we can help, and how we can pitch in.
Do you think that Boko Haram may be dining with Al-Qaeda? This is something you have been battling for 14 years now. Do you think that Boko Haram is connected to Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb? Do you think that Boko Haram has links with Al-Shabaab? You know, the U.S. involvement in Somalia since the 1990s. And if yes, what kind of strategy should be applied? I know of the U.S. Trans-Saharan counterterrorism strategy.
Right. Connections between Boko Haram and other terrorist groups could or could not be there. The problem is, though, that their tactics are the same. And so when we see bombings of civilian targets and terror raids and reprisal killings and abductions and these sort of tactics, whether they're connected politically or financially or ideologically, really doesn't matter. What we've got are some outright crimes against humanity, and it's just a horrific operation that has to be brought to a halt.
For over 14 years now, the U.S. has been involved in the war against terror. Do you think there were mistakes which were made in your attempt to
Yes.
erase Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations? And if yes, how do you advise countries now entering the war on terror to fight?
Yeah. Now, Charles, a very good question and a very important question. Terror, when it hits a country, and many of us have been hit by terrorism, many countries, terror when it hits a country has a psychological effect, and mistakes can be made. Certainly the U.S. has made mistakes in this battle, but we've learned from our mistakes.
Which are some of those mistakes, so that countries like Cameroon, Nigeria, these are new actors in the war on terror, so that they shouldn't repeat the same mistakes?
Correct.
Because one of the criticisms against the war on terror, and this criticism is coming from former British Foreign Secretary David Miliband. This is what David Miliband says, that the war on terror was a mistake, adding, quote, "The war on terror implied a belief that the correct response to the terrorist threat was primarily a military one, to track down and kill a hardcore of extremists," end of quote.
He has certainly drawn some conclusions from the history of the struggle against terror. And I would say that probably the most important lessons in dealing with terror is, first and foremost, it is not just a military issue. I would agree with him on that. It is a whole of government approach. In fact, it is a whole of society approach. Unity is perhaps the most important quality of a country in being able to respond to terrorism. There must be unity. We admire here in Cameroon the tolerance between the religions present in Cameroon. The community here is very, very close and cohesive despite its wonderful diversity. That is critical. Unity is most important. Other mistakes are, you must hold true to your principles. You cannot surrender your principles to terrorism. You must hold true to your principles. The most important principle is that the security forces are there to protect the civilian population. That is the first priority of every military element, every police element, is to protect civilians. Then we reduce the terrorists.
You reduce the terrorists. You know, Mr. Ambassador, in this fight against terrorism, whether we like it or not, civil liberties will be reduced. Telephone calls will be highly surveyed. Maybe some of us are going to use enhanced interrogation techniques, as terrible as they are, but probably that is the only means for the moment to get the truth. You know,
we would hope
the famous Bush administration policy.
We would hope not. We would be.
Is it difficult to win terrorists, erase people, the Boko Haram threat, for example, without using torture? Is it possible?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How?
Absolutely. We can go deep into that question, but the fact of the matter is there's a proper way to gain information from your detainees.
Is it possible to have it without having further Guantanamos?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We know that for a fact. In fact, one of the most important things to be upheld is rule of law. Whatever activity you're undertaking as a security force, you must be accountable to the rule of law. And the laws should not be bent, abused, or changed. As I say, you must adhere to your principles and you must stick to your principles. If we give up our principles, the terrorists win.
But these are people who don't respect human rights. These are people who don't respect the rule of law. These are people who don't respect democracy. They come to a village, they come to a city, they kidnap girls, 200 plus in Nigeria. But these are people who don't respect even the very existence of human life. They don't respect. They enter villages and kill everybody. This is an issue where democracy shouldn't talk.
by their very actions, they are dragging us back into the Stone Age, into the Dark Ages. They're dragging us away from our principles, everything that makes us human, everything that makes us a great society. And I'm talking globally as a great society. We cannot compromise our values. We cannot, that is the whole point. Adhering to our values is how we win. That's how we defeat the terrorists. Unity and sticking to our principles. That is what is important. So, respect for human rights, respect for the civilian population, protection of the civilian population. These are the first jobs of all the security services. We have repudiated enhanced interrogation techniques. Absolutely. And fundamentally, repudiated that. There are much better ways to defeat the enemy, to defeat an enemy as evil as Boko Haram. And the way to do it is by sticking to our principles, maintaining our values, and staying on the moral high ground.
Ambassador, let's talk a question which has to do with financing. The budget of Al-Qaeda supersedes that of about more than 50 nations in the world, including my country, Cameroon. The annual budget of Al-Qaeda operations is more than that of the budget of Cameroon. How can we reduce financial terrorism? This is an area where the U.S. has been involved for so many years. How do we control the banks? How do we control financial transactions so that we get the sources of finances to these terror networks?
This is part of the partnership, and a very important partnership. The terrorist financing operates in a shadowy world, very close to the criminal world. And so as we increase cooperation internationally in the banking system and in other financial institutions, we start to eliminate those areas where the criminals and the terrorists can operate. It is very, very important to cut off the source of funds and to stop the ability of these organizations to continue to purchase the explosives, the ammunition, the weapons that they use to luring people into their employ. So the financial aspect of the battle is a very, very important aspect of the battle. You make a good point.
I know that these are issues which have to do with erasing black marketing, reducing drug trafficking.
Right.
You know that Al-Shabaab in Kenya or in Somalia are highly financed by the black market in charcoal, which cost African economies over $2 billion yearly, and all of that money goes into Al-Shabaab. What kind of mechanisms would the American administration put in Africa to outlaw these black sources of funding?
This is part of that partnership where we can take lessons learned over the past decade or two that we can help apply with our colleagues in the various countries affected, particularly here in Cameroon. Specifically here in Cameroon. I've met with several ministers and found them to be excellent partners. They're very sophisticated, they understand the problem, and they are actively seeking the modern tools to stop the issue here in Cameroon.
Ambassador, some few questions before we end. Is Boko Haram a threat to U.S. national security?
Anytime we see a movement like this damaging our partner or our friends, it is a threat to U.S. security. As I said before, as Cameroon prospers, so does the United States. So does America prosper. We are together. We are partners, and we are inextricably linked culturally, economically. We are all part of that same global village. So our interest is Cameroon. We want to see Cameroonian people to have peace and stability and the opportunity to pursue their happiness. And Boko Haram is standing right smack in the way of that. Boko Haram is the big rock in the critical path, and we want to work with Cameroon to help move it.
Considering your experience in Africa, personally, how do you think this can be reduced, if not eradicated?
We have to salute the efforts of the Cameroonian security forces so far. They've done an excellent job, they've been courageous, and they've been defending the border, and they've been trying to stop the infiltration. We will continue that effort with them. We now have the Chadians to assist. Benin is offering to assist, so that multinational force is starting to come together. The neighbors from all the villages surrounding are coming together to hunt down this man-eater. The time will come when Boko Haram will be brought to an end and when Abu Bakr Shekau will be brought to justice.
One but last question. The size that Boko Haram controls today is almost the territory of Belgium. will drones be advisable to destroy their camps completely?
We will need every tool possible, and we will see how the fighting develops. We do know this: there will be more hard fighting ahead, and we have to steel ourselves for that. But together, with the proper training, the proper equipment, and the proper cooperation between the various elements that are facing Boko Haram, we can bring this menace to an end.
Finally, is U.S. assistance intended to contain Boko Haram or eliminate Boko Haram?
Boko Haram needs to be eliminated, period. This will be taken in stages. The effort will be led by the countries in the region who are directly affected by it. We will provide a supporting role, and we will hope to bring it to a quick and swift conclusion.
Ambassador Michael Stephen Hoza, thanks very much for accepting to be guest on GLOBEWATCH.
Charles, it's a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.